In his inaugural address to the American Negro Academy, W.E.B. Du Bois set out to make race a basis of collective consciousness among Black people. He reasoned that races were foundational elements of human history. As such, they were the only sure units of progress. This natural law of advancement applied even in the United States in spite of its acclaimed individualism. Thus, the Academy had to help its constituents recognize that human beings are divided into races and inspire them to identify themselves accordingly. This 1897 initiative might seem curious in contexts where it is customary to treat race and identity as inseparable, particularly with reference to Black Americans. Media discussions about Black people typically proceed as if they are, by definition, conversations about race. In everyday parlance, racial designations typically function as self-evident mirrors of constitutive properties, despite their scientific uncertainty about their coherence as scientific modes of classification. It is commonplace to characterize interactions among people distinguished by different racial names as race relations. Conflicts over how the U.S. Census Bureau tracks the nation's population have centered on the accuracy with which its racial categories match individuals' sense of themselves. Similarly, race has figured in affirmative action controversies as an inherent element of identities that wrongfully disadvantages or privileges people. Such conventional scenarios construe race as an inescapable personal quality that defines who a person is. They suggest that Du Bois's endeavor was an unnecessary attempt to convince people simply to be themselves. Yet, Du Bois understood his task as essential and new. Translating race into identity entailed contending with ideas long embedded in Black American reform discourse. He described the situation at the start of his address, the conservation of races, as if he were eulogizing a position that might have been noble but was ultimately untenable. He observed that Negroes had always been skeptical about talk of races because they believed it advanced inaccurate propositions about their innate moral, mental, and political capacity. They tended to deprecate and minimize race distinctions, he observed, clinging to a belief that out of one blood God created all nations. For his part, it was a mistake to use ideals of human brotherhood to navigate social and political realities. Anyone who proposed such undertakings apparently failed to grasp what it meant for Negroes to be American. Reluctant Race Men reconstructs the tradition Du Bois sought to displace. It traces 19th century challenges to race in reform initiatives, largely among Northern Black men. It thus situates the equation of race and identity at the end of a long trajectory of collective action.